Good afternoon to all. Before we begin, just a gentle reminder that all microphones are to be muted unless questions are to be asked, as not disrupt the event proceedings. Please settle down and the event shall commence shortly. Please be informed that there will be a question and answer session at the end of the talk. You may submit your questions via the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Do include your name and state whether you would like to ask your questions live. Good afternoon to Mr. Richard Wee, Managing Partner, Mercer's Richard Wee Chambers, Mr. Hamahinder Singh, Head of Law School, Taylor's Law School, lecturers, fellow students, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second dialogue session of 2020. My name is Kimberly Justine Pekju and I shall be your MC for today. To kickstart today's proceedings, we would like to invite Ms. Sia Chin Chin, Senior Lecturer of Taylor's Law School, to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Richard Wee.
Thank you very much, Kimberly, and welcome Richard to join our session today. All right, so a brief account on Richard. Richard graduated with a Bachelor of Laws from the University of London in 1996, and he completed the Certificate in Legal Practice in 1998 and was admitted as an advocate and solicitor of the High Court of Malaya in 1999. He has 20 years of experience and his areas of expertise include criminal defense, cyber law, medical law, sports and esports law, as well as trust law. He believes in professional development and he continues to acquire new skills and knowledge. He holds a certificate in strategic conflict management for professionals and was awarded by the Singapore Mediation Center in 2011. Also a certificate of attendance for the Asian Domain Name Dispute Resolution Center workshop in 2014, awarded by the AIAC, Asian International Arbitration Center, as well as a certificate from the Southeast Asia Regional Anti-Doping Organization in 2018 for result management for anti-doping. In 2016, he obtained a certificate of sports arbitration from AIAC, a qualification which is a preparatory step towards appointment as a sports arbitrator. In 2019, last year, FIFA and World Cup Football Association of Malaysia appointed Richard to the Appeals Committee of the National Disputes Resolution Chambers. Let's put our hands together and welcome Richard. Thank you.
Hi.
The floor is yours, Richard. Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Taylors. It's a pleasure to be online. I think it's absolutely, I'm sure everyone here would have heard this phrase numerous times, but it's absolutely unprecedented that I have to do this, you know. So it's in 20 over years in my practice, I've never used a video conference so much. Let's put it that way. But when I spoke to Mr. Harmahinda a few months ago to plan this, we were going to host this face-to-face. I think it was supposed to be 2 weeks ago, Harmahinda, initially, right?
Yes, it was supposed to be last week, actually.
Last week, yeah? Yeah, much obliged.
Yeah, it was supposed to be last week.
So I'm pretty pleased to be able to speak to all of you. I think there's about 68 participants I can see, so much obliged for logging in. Esports law. Let's just try and tackle that word first. Esports law. Does it even exist? So of course, typical of any lawyer, whenever we do anything, we will try to look at definition first. I mean, look at your contract law. When you first started your contract law, your speakers, your lecturers would have drilled into you the existence of Madam Carlyle, the infamous carbolic smoke balls, and the poor Mrs. Carlyle. So everyone memorized that case. Lord Justice Bowen, with his phenomenal decision on what is an invitation to trade, a mere path, an executory contract, a offer acceptance, and so on and so forth. So that was the benchmark of all contract cases. The definition of contract came from Carlyle against carbolic smoke balls. So for esports, unfortunately, we don't have a Carlyle carbolic smoke balls. In fact, even the law that I'm going to discuss with you, there is no specific law on esports law. Unlike sports law. So like, you know, one of the areas RWC is involved is sports law. So sports law have its own independent jurisprudence. The most famous independent jurisprudence of sports law is doping, where there's no other area in law which deals with doping, positive doping, the tests for doping, the rules for doping, the result management of doping. So while we call it litigation or going to court or dispute resolution in normal life, but in sports for doping, we call it result management. So they have their own doping, their own jurisprudence. And I'm not sure whether you're aware, but for the standard of care for sports law, it's not beyond reasonable doubt, and it's not on the balance of probability. It is on a standard of personal satisfaction. So the arbitrator or the adjudicator, when they are faced or confronted with a court case or case in sports, the standard of proof is on the basis of personal satisfaction. So that is how sports work. The independence and the way the jurisprudence of sports law work. So flowing from that, does it apply to esports? So esports, unfortunately, is one of those areas where the cart is ahead of the horse. So it is moved so fast that areas such as esports law, regulation, doping, tournament rules and regulation are chasing after the game. So, and esports, of course, have a few peculiar ground. So we need to just set all the stone before we go into the law. Anybody can watch football, anybody can play badminton. You don't need permission from Mr. Hamahinda to go home and play table tennis, for example. These are the kind of sports which belongs to any one of us. It belongs to us and it doesn't belong to us at the same time. That is the nature of sports. But esports, it's a video game. It's an online video game which has evolved into a tournament. And those of you here who are ardent esports players will know companies like Blizzard, you would have used Twitch, you probably are on Steam most of the time. So these are private companies who own these games using these platforms on these kind of broadcast pages like Twitch. It's an independent world and it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to a company. So, for example, all of us love Angry Bird, but we don't own Angry Bird. Angry Bird belongs to a European company. I believe they're in Finland. So that is the biggest difference between normal sports law and esports law, where esports, you don't own the game. Someone else owns the game. So later when Susanna clicked towards intellectual property, you will see that we are very, very weird to discuss intellectual property for this kind of area, because players like you and me who play Dota 2 or CSGO or PUBG, we don't own the game. We subscribe to it. So you got to understand the background of esports first. So flowing from there, one of the first questions people ask me is, what is esports? So of course I always tell them, Angry Bird. Have you played Angry Bird? Have you heard Angry Bird? Many of them say, yeah, I heard of it, yeah. So imagine Angry Bird, but there's a competition. You're fighting with each other. You're going to beat the other fella in Tanzania. You're fighting somebody in Uruguay. So you're having this online competition. So there is gaming, and then there is esports. So esports is a subset of gaming. Gaming being the big picture. Or you play Nintendo. All these kind of games. These are video games, quite addictive. But esports have evolved into a tournament where there is a rigid, but at the same time fluid competition. And esports, of course, we all know, those who play esports, there are two kinds of tournament: an online tournament, which is now happening all over the world, and offline tournament, like the famous the World Cup for Dota 2 was held in Shanghai last year. Estimated more than 500 million people logged on to watch the game. And I think almost 150,000 people were in Shanghai just to be part of the whole activity. A massive, massive tournament, offline tournament. So of course, the other part about esports is that the gambling element. So we have things like loot box. People buying loot box. So in Belgium, loot box has been declared to be illegal. So there's an element of esports where we have to talk about the illegality aspects, the gambling aspects, and whether the Malaysian government may one day declare esports, certain aspects of esports, to be illegal because of the elements of gambling. So these are something we're going to discuss. So now it's about 2:15, just nice. So 10 minutes of talking the brief. So let me now, I will invite all of you to give me a Q&A later. I think many of you have some questions, but let me be honest with all of you now. I don't have all the answers because even I am searching for the truth. I've been doing esports law for about now 4 years now. So when we started in 2016, dabbing into it, reading it up on the area, because I was already a sports lawyer by then. I literally downloaded Steam on my computer. So I imagine a 43-year-old, I was 43-year-old at the time. I let go of my computer games. My last computer game was Counter-Strike and all the Donkey Kong, which I used to play when I was a law student. Only way to lepas tension those days. And when I became a lawyer, I let it go. I became a lawyer. So I couldn't imagine that 20 years later, 17 years out in my career, I actually had to download the game and to ask my daughter, what is this? My daughter would teach me how to play it. So it's interesting. That was in 2016. And at the time, we realized after a while, we were the only one, the only lawyer in the entire country doing esports law. I asked around, no one knew. Some were even laughing at me for even doing it. So I said, never mind, they're clients, and true enough now, we remain well, no more the only one, but the lawyer when people look at esports law. So I'm fairly honored for that. I didn't expect that. But when you are ahead of the game, there's a lot of pressure on us to always be the best, stay ahead. So we constantly have to read up, always making sure that we know what we are, the stuff. So whenever any client, and almost all esports people look for us, we need to know the answer. So back to what I said earlier, unfortunately, I don't know all the answers because some of the issues are still fairly uncharted. So that's the tone we're in. So I mean, if Mr. Harmahinda asked me to give you a lecture on sports law, it'd be very easy because sports law has been around for many, many decades. So it's quite sub. So if we could just explain tap, and then it can even be a book. So that is sports law. Esports, I'm actually writing a book now on esports with a colleague of mine, and we are struggling to even get the chapters out. But we will get it out so that we can share the knowledge. Now, so the first area I want to talk about in esports is maybe Susanna can open up the page about hang on. It's about governance in esports. Maybe Susanna can click on that. Much obliged. So this is governance in esports. You can see a nice picture of a esports tournament. I think this is ESL. If you scroll to the next page, the biggest challenge about esports now is that if you look at football, there is FIFA for the world. And then in Asia, there is AFC. And then there's Malaysia, there's FAM. And if you are Selangor supporter, there's FAS. And if you live in PJ like me, there is a PJ Football Association. And if you stay in Damansara Utama like me, there is actually a Damansara Football Club. Can you see the flow? Anybody? I don't know. I hope, because it's difficult. Nobody can see people nodding their head or not. So you see right on top is FIFA, AFC, then FAM. In fact, I'm sorry, there's one more. Before FAM, there's a Southeast Asian Football Federation. So FIFA, AFC, Southeast Asian Football Federation, FAM, Selangor FA, PJFA, Damansara Football Club. You see the way it works. That is a typical structure of a sports administration. We don't have that in esports. Now, why do we need the sports administration? Well, once we have the sports administration, if a player cheats in a tournament. So for example, when Luis Suarez bite the Italian player in the World Cup about 8 years ago, he was banned the whole world and nobody engaged him because every association complied with FIFA's instruction. Whereas, and I hope you all know who is Luis Suarez. So basically in this game, this very famous former Liverpool player, he decided that he wanted to literally bite a player during a match. So, I mean, typical Liverpool players. So then he then, after biting the player, of course, got a red card and he was banned for many months. It was a bit of a nutcase. So the point is the whole world listened to the order. And then, but in esports, we have many players who are cheating. So they cheat in Dota 2 tournament, but they appear again in another tournament, maybe under a different name. And why we can't enforce the ban is because we don't have a FIFA. So these are examples on the screen, the notable organization, IESF and ASICS. These are notable ones, but they're not effective at all. They are strong, they are good at what they do. In fact, they are quite formidable. But when I say they're not effective at all, they are unable to impose sanctions like the way FIFA and AFC does. Now, this is important because the character of any law is sanction. You need to have sanction, or else there is effectively no law. Most people, they comply with law. One of the reasons is because of the existence of sanctions. So to have something to have the character of law, I repeat, we need to have sanctions. So here we have so-called sanctions, but it's not effective. So this is something, it's an ongoing battle. In the States, USA, there's already a very effective US Esports Federation, but that's only for US. But for the moment, one of the world's most effective esports federation is China. China, just like the way they ran Wuhan, they ran esports like a gangster. So when the tournament, when the Esports Federation of China say you're banned, they really ban you. You cannot come online at all. They even track you. They have the big data. They know who you are. So the moment you log on, even as a different name, you're blocked straight away. That's how powerful Chinese esports are. So every Chinese esports players they comply, and that's why Chinese esports flourish. It's a multi-billion yuan business. It's doing so well that during the whole lockdown in China, esports flourished. So everyone was playing, and it was an effective platform. So that's an example of why we need proper organization. So there's the first issue you need to understand about esports. We don't have proper governing agencies. Now, the next topic, so if you have any question, hold your thoughts, but put it down in writing, hold your thoughts, put it down in writing. We'll come back to this later if you have any question. The next one, Susanna, can I trouble you to scroll towards contract in esports, please?
Hold on, yeah.
Take your time. Sorry, Susanna, I'm drinking in front of you. So all the Muslim participants, I apologize that I'm drinking in front of you, but I'm having a really bad throat. Sorry, yeah? I apologize. Okay, contract in esports. Now, contract law in esports is actually contract. So that was why I spoke about color against public smoke balls at the beginning of this talk. Because everything you learn in color will apply here. Everything. But the thing about being a lawyer, and I think Mr. Harmahinda and team will educate you as you go on. One of the most important things about being a lawyer is to understand the industry. So you cannot do aviation law if you don't understand airplanes, airports, and logistics of the plane, of the airport. You need to understand how we buy engines from Boeing, Airbus, the long-term leasing of aviation. You need, if you're doing technology law, particularly for oil and gas, or even electricity and water, you need to understand the rules and regulation of electricity and water before you are able to advise this area. Conveyancing, if you do conveyancing, you need to understand property transactions before you give advice, etc., etc. So same thing for esports. Before you give advice on contract for esports, you literally have to understand what is team. So I recall a few years ago, it was quite hilarious. I won't mention who's the other side, but needless to say, it was from an international law firm not based in Malaysia. They were negotiating a deal with me. And of course, my firm at the time was known as Richard W. and Yip. It was a very small firm. With, I was in, before Richard W. Chambers, I was in a partner in Ma Wing Kwai and Associates for 3.5 years. And then prior to that, I was a managing partner of Richard W. and Yip. That was for about 8 years, 7-8 years. So at RWY, we had less than 7 lawyers, and this big short lawyer from 120 lawyers firm didn't understand what I was talking about when I mentioned Steam. So after about 10 seconds, I realized he didn't know. And of course, when he got found, he got even more defensive. So I conveniently, I said, look, can we take a break and maybe you can have a look at what is Steam first and come back to avoid embarrassing him. But that is the point, ladies and gentlemen. You want to do esports, you need to at least understand what is Steam. And I don't mean the vapor coming out from hot water, you know. So need to understand all this. Understand the tournaments, understand the game, how Dota 2 works, CSGO, PUBG, Fortnite, Mobile Legend. Understand the game. So those of you here who are gamers, esports players, you have an advantage. So one of my lawyer, he just left to set up his own law firm, but we're still collaborating. He is a gamer. So we discuss all the time. And then sometimes we log on in our office onto Steam to watch the game, to see the latest download, because then there's a new feature in Dota 2. So we see the feature, we realize, okay, you know, how would a marshal deal with this feature when there's a tournament? So then when we give advice to esports players or tournament organizers, we know. So while you need to know your offer, acceptance, consideration, your damages, issues of, now the most famous one is frustration. Everybody now is an expert in frustration. All these elements you need to know before you do contract esports. So classic one, if I can just go, Susanna, can I trouble you to flip to the next page? I think about the player known as Smunya. Yes. So Owen Smunya, in 2017, he had a contractual problem. So while he was an esports player, but the problem that he faced was an employment matter based on contract law. So he was engaged to play for a club, a team, but he couldn't escape. Those of you here who are gamers as far back as 2016, 2017 will probably know about this fella. So he's a CSGO player, and eventually he had to negotiate his way out. And even though he was an esports player, but the lawyers who advised him were contract lawyers. Excuse me. But the point being is that his contract issue started because of an esports problem. He was not playing, and the team dropped him from playing because his Counter-Strike action dropped. His statistics had dropped. He wasn't shooting as much as what he should. That was the story given by the club, the team. He gave a different version, but they were debating about the effectiveness of his game. So there you go. You know, you need to know esports in order to advise him. So combination of sports law and the industry of esports. Combination of contract law and the industry of esports. An example. Okay. Now let's go on to the next slide. Can I trouble Susanna to go to doping, please? Now, doping is a sports law area. It is the principal character of sports law. To do sports law, you need to know doping. So sports doping, the most infamous and biggest case ever is a very old case in 1988. I hope most of you were already born by then. So in 1988, I was 15 years old, and they had this, for the first time, the Olympic Games went to South Korea. So that was the second time an Asian nation host the Olympic Games. The first one being Tokyo, I think it was in 1960s. So in 1988, there was a very famous sprinter by the name of Carl Lewis. in 1984, Carl Lewis, an American, he won 4 gold medals in the track and field event. That replicated the legendary Jesse Owens of 1936. In 1936, Jesse Owens won the 100 meters, 200 meters, 4x100 meters, and the long jump gold. Carl Lewis, he replicated that in 1984. So in 1988, he was going for it again. But there was an unexpected runner from Canada by the name of Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson was phenomenal. He was running at 9.8 seconds in 1988. There was no Nike Air, no Asics gel. He was just wearing a normal shoe. And the track and field was using a normal track, not even like the current track. He didn't have dry fit shirts. It was just normal singlet. He was wearing normal singlet. And he was bursting, running so fast. And in 1988, he won the gold medal at 9.83 seconds. Never before has anybody go below 9.9 at that time. One day after that, it was announced that he was tested positive for steroids. And that caused the whole world to suddenly know what is steroid and that it was wrong. The thing is that doping in sports is wrong because you're cheating. When you take drugs to win, then the best athlete didn't win. The most drugged athlete win. So it's not about the stronger one, it's the person who take more drugs. So unfortunately, the phenomenon of drugs is happening in esports. There is strong suspicion that players are consuming drugs to stay awake, train. And so doping is another matter going in. So as an esports lawyer, I have been engaged many times to give advice on this area, whether or not the contract of the esports can include elements of anti-doping. Now doping, can I trouble you to switch next page, please, Susanna? Next one. Yes, this is the most infamous drugs taken by esports players. So they've been caught taking Adderall to keep you awake. You know? Next one, please. And hang on. Yeah. So in doping, the policeman of doping of the world is WADA, W-A-D-A, World Anti-Doping Agency. The headquarters is based in Canada. So WADA, they are financed by the IOC, International Olympic. They run constant tests on athletes all the time. Football athlete, volleyball player, sepak takraw, any world sports, they test. In Malaysia, WADA is represented by ADAMAS. ADAMAS stands for Anti-Doping Agency of Malaysia, ADAMAS. So ADAMAS conduct tests all the time. But esports tournaments so far have refused to allow WADA to step in to test the players. This is an issue. This is an issue. Whether or not this makes the esports game legit or otherwise. Because if the players are cheating and we are encouraging our young athletes to cheat by taking drugs, then that is not a game. It's nothing more than a drug, no different than someone who's taking drugs and going to club and shake their head or taking injecting a drug, no different. So we have to stop that. So this is one of the biggest challenge, the battle between esports and anti-doping agencies. And in my view, so long as esports do not embrace anti-doping agency, it will not be seen to be a legitimate sports. And this will affect long-term sponsorship. Sponsors will not want to be associated with any tournament or any sports which is tainted by drugs. So this is something which is an ongoing topic. We're still discussing this. and we have no answer. So this case that I put on the screen revolves around the game in Philippines. So in this game, the Galaxy Battle 2 tournament held in the Philippines, the Philippine government wanted to have a mandatory drug test, but the publisher rescinded its sponsorship and refused to go to Philippines because of this. So those who play esports will know publishers are not LexisNexis or Thomson Reuters. The publishers we're talking about are the people who own the esports games. So when the owner of the games pull out the game, then there's no tournament. You know, so this is one of the biggest problems. I was quite surprised at the time when this case happened, why they did that. But I believe, I think the esports publishers perhaps have their own commercial reasons not going into doping tests yet. I can only speculate at the moment. I cannot give a definitive comment for now. All right. The next one, very quick one. Can I trouble you to go to e-doping, Susanna? You scroll down, e-doping. Yes, e-doping. Now, what in the world is e-doping? So we just spoke about doping. What is e-doping? E-doping is, in simple computer language, is hacking. You know, we're hacking the software. And I'm sorry, I think if you just heard a meow, that was my cat. I think my cat is hungry. Yeah, so I asked my family to go and feed the cat. So sorry about that. So quite cute having a house. The other day I was having a webinar. My cat walked past. There you go. So back to this, e-doping. E-doping is about hacking. Now, one of the things people begin to notice when you have an online tournament, for example, let's say CSGO, Counter-Strike. So when someone is shooting, bum, 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 the tournament organizer and the technical team, they know that when you're aiming at the wall and you know someone is behind the wall, when the person comes out of the wall, you shoot. The reaction is less than 1 second. But some players is even more faster. So that means there are two possibilities. The player is on some special steroid that he or she is so fast, or he or she is a hacker. They have hacked and they're able to see beyond the wall. So because they can see beyond the wall, they know the other guy, the other party is behind the wall. So the hand is on trigger, and the moment the other side pip, he pulled the trigger. So the tournament organizer begin to notice that, hey, this fellow is too fast. And eventually they discovered that there's this hacking going on, and there's this e-doping where they are able to break the wall and see through it. This is an example of e-hacking, e-doping. Susanna, can you click on the next page, please? Thank you. So this is e-doping is a manipulation of software. Examples of e-doping is wall hacks, inbots, stream sniping, ghosting, scripting, macro, DDoS attacks. So these are examples of e-doping we are following. And this affects the validity of the tournament. So if we are advising the tournament organizer or the marshal, these are the things we have to take into account. Of course, most marshals, they won't be able to pick this up, but the tournament organizer, technical team behind the scene, they will be able to pick it up. So we have been advising people on this. So this is the new dope, the new drugs of esports. In fact, the word e-doping was coined by our law firm back in 2016. So, but we're not sure who started the word, but in Malaysia, we were the first people to use the word e-doping. And I remember when I was lecturing esports back in 2017 and 2018, some of the people who don't play esports thought that I meant that we're taking a steroid and injecting into the laptop. So, you know, they thought I was being funny. I laughed at them. I said, no. E-doping means you're hacking, you're not injecting anything into the laptop. But there you go, when you don't understand the industry, you know, you ask some very interesting questions. Can I take to the next page, please, Susanna? Thanks. So this is an example. So you can see the wall hack. So the person have a better headshot. They are able to see the blue shots. You can see the blue characters. So this is a screenshot of a wall hack. Next, please. So for DDoS, we understand that this is how it is done. You can see the attacker is attacking the controller, and once they can attack the controller, they create zombies, and this will affect the software of the game. So it happened many, many times, but to be fair, I think the esports organizers and tournament owners and the publishers, they are more vigilant now, and this is now reduced. But the concern is always still there. So if you are going to do esports law, you need to know this area. Okay? Now, next is the next page, please, is the efforts. Thank you. So this is the effort in combating e-doping. And if you look at efforts in combating e-doping, you see that matters are now treated as strict liability. So those of you here who have completed your contract law, and of course those who have not, let me now give you a quick tuition. So those who know contract law, you would have heard the phrase strict liability. So long story short, strict liability is basically, I don't care what you think, what you did is wrong. So it's a wrong is a wrong. It's in very simple language. That is strict liability. So if you are caught on e-doping, you can't even plead innocence, you're out. So that is how some tournament organizers have combat e-doping so far. And you can see at the bottom, again, the association and regulatory bodies. So this goes back to our earlier part of our slide where we were discussing about the need to have a proper esports or association. So if you have an esports association like FIFA or IOC or the World Badminton Federation or the World Netball Federation, then they are able to govern and control and make sure that player cannot play anymore, for example. So this is the efforts for e-doping. Now, Susanna, can I take you up first? Can you go up first? I'm sorry to go up and down to the issues of intellectual property, please. So this now falls nicely to the issue of intellectual property. So e-doping and IP is connected for esports. So if you look at the next page, you can see there's always a dispute between a developer and publisher. So Blizzard and Valve, for example, they fought about the rights to Dota. And therefore, that's why you end up having Dota 2. And then even Blizzard and Valve together suing mobile game developers like Lilith and Youcool for copyright infringements because the game looks similar. So once you have a game which doesn't belong to the entire population of the world, but to certain people only, we have this problem. So it's a unique situation where we have a game open for the whole world, but doesn't belong to the whole world. So, and therefore any disputes, we have to go back to the owner of the game to deal with it. And e-doping, for example, if we have any hacking in a game, if the game is hacked, then the only person actually who can resolve this is the publisher. So that is why we always encourage the publisher to get involved in esports association. But commercially, I think most of the publishers are reluctant to join. They can't blame them because they have complete independence at the moment. So for them to join an association, they will lose some of their independence. They can't really blame the company, all right? But this is something we continue to discuss. So if you're advising on esports law, and most of you are law students now, by the time you become a lawyer and you start practicing as a lawyer, I think the laws and the rules and regulations for esports will become more pronounced, will become more stable. So I believe in 3 to 5 years' time, areas related to esports may be more stable, I repeat the word, and when you give advice, your advice will be more definitive as compared to now. Now it's a little bit fluid for now. So this is an example of a dispute. If you go to the next page, you can see where parties are suing. Look at the games. Arena of Valor Dota 2 and League of Legends, they look exactly the same. So there's always been dispute whether A is copying B, B is copying C, C is copying A. We don't know, right? So we don't know. Of course, among them they know, but then that's why they're suing each other. So this is an example. If you're advising publishers, and I am advising some publishers, we end up talking about this most of the time. Huh? So this is something you may have to look at. Next one. And the next one, sorry, Susanna, this one. So this is an example what happened in ESL, where there was a takedown issue. This is not really about intellectual property, but because of intellectual property, there was a broadcasting dispute about this. So this was in the Genting tournament, where they had a Genting Dota 2 tournament in 2018, where Facebook was involved. But long story short, the publisher shut down the streaming rights because felt it held that the streaming rights should be open to everybody. Anybody and everybody can stream. So this is another issue. What can you stream? The streaming rights of esports is another big lacuna. How do you govern streaming rights? What can you stream? What can't you stream? What is the extent you can stream? So, well, let's say I'm streaming an esports tournament now. Let's say. So you're watching me now. I'm actually streaming a game. And below my name, you can see my jacket. You see something scrolling here. And it says there, Nike, Just Do It, or Adidas, the game, or Under Armour. So I'm being sponsored. I'm being advertised. So can I advertise on my streaming page, Twitch, while I am streaming behind me, or in fact in front of me, here, a game? So you hear Dota 2 game going on, and below you can see Adidas, Nike, Proton, Honda. Can I do that? So these are questions which is still up in the air. Some countries say cannot, some countries say can, and I think Malaysia, no case yet. We have not tested it yet. So these are another area which we are constantly keeping an eye on and hoping to find a definitive answer in due time. Okay? Now, if I can then take your attention further up, Susanna, sorry to make you go up and down, very quickly on the issue of sponsorship. So for esports sponsorship, we do advise parties on the rights for sponsorship. So sponsorship have its own rules and regulation, contractual issues. There you can see jersey logos, naming rights, stadium boards, blah, blah, blah. So like for my law firm, if some of you have been to a stadium called Axiata Arena next to the Bukit Jalil Stadium, we were the lawyers who changed the name. We did the renaming rights. So it was quite a difficult work. It took us many months to change the name from a Putra Stadium to Axiata Arena. And it required land matters, had to go through the cabinet because we found out that it was a cabinet who approved the name Bukit Jalil Stadium and Putra Stadium. So these are rules and regulation that we have to go through. So the rules and regulation involved in sponsorship is different. So ladies and gentlemen, remember lawyers, the moment there's rules, there's regulation, lawyers can step in because then you're able to get advice about the rules and regulation. For sponsorship, we do have some interesting challenges because what can you sponsor and what you can't sponsor during a tournament. And because the esports game belong to a certain publisher, that publisher actually can control what you can and cannot advertise. So it is an interesting point to look at when you do esports work. Okay? Can I now go to the last part on mergers and acquisition? Mergers and acquisition. Thank you, Susanna. Next page, yes. So recently we noticed that there is because of the size of the esports industry, the business of esports industry have tremendously grown. It has now become a multi-billion-dollar industry. And in the recent times, the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen lots of big companies merging or acquiring esports assets. So in Malaysia recently, 2 famous esports companies called Orange and the gaming company merged to be called now Orange. So they are a huge company, and they own many cyber spaces, and they organize many tournaments. And then a big company in this region is Mineski. Mineski is well known for running tournaments, but Mineski Malaysia recently, I think, went through a demerger where one of the founding partners left to set up his own company. So you can see now that esports is no more a game of young kids playing outside the cyber cafe. Esports is serious. It is no different than BMW buying over Mercedes-Benz, for example. So we see a trend going on. And of course, for lawyers, mergers and acquisition require a special kind of work. The due diligence agreement, the international transaction, the multi-layered contract, the cross-boundary agreements, rules and regulation of the government financing regulation, Foreign Investment Commission, Money Laundering Act, yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. So if you are doing corporate work, which my firm is doing, we need to know all this, to understand this. And of course, when you are doing a merger and acquisition about esports, you need to understand, I repeat what I said earlier, you need to understand the game of esports so that we are able to advise the client more effectively about the merger process. Right? So this is the business part about esports. So that's it. In fact, Mahinda, that's Chin Xia, right? Miss Chin Xia, right? Chin Xia, yeah. Sorry, I see your name is Chin Xia, yeah. So that's it actually. Yeah, it's that's more or less the summarized version. I can do this for a few hours actually. So when we conduct this lecture at the Bar Council or the State Bar, because I'm a visiting lecturer, and some of the other universities, they invite me to give a talk on this. The talk goes on for about 2 hours, maybe even 3. But I'm summarizing it because it's webinar. It's very, very tiring for someone to look at my face for 1 hour. So that's it. This is more or less the touch and go version of esports law.
Yeah, I think it's very good that you have given a very concise version for our students and our audience here, because I think some of them, after hearing this, they have more knowledge about it and maybe more keen to join as well. So I think it's a very good starting point for those who are interested. All right, thank you.
Thanks, yeah.
Yes.
We have some question, Chin. Should we answer this from Nakiran Kumar?
Yes. So, Kimberly, would you like to read out the questions for us, please? Kimberly, thank you so much, Kimberly.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Richard, for that very enlightening talk. I believe that all of us have indeed gained some insight into esports law in Malaysia. And now we will open the floor to questions. So we will have some questions that I will tell you and some questions that where the students want to ask themselves. So the first question that we have is posted by Nakiran. Nakiran, if you care to ask Mr. Richard.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Richard.
Hi, very good.
I'm Nakiran, a second-year law student in Taylor's. So, referring to an article you wrote in the MalaysianLaw.com in 2017 and also your today's talk, you have stated that contractual obligations from esports contracts are grappling legal issues in the industry. Do you believe that the existing law of contracts in Malaysia is sufficient to cover esports contracts, or is there a need for a separate legal framework for esports contracts, especially when the industry has many athletes who are less than the age of majority being parties to the contract? Thank you, Mr. Richard.
Yeah, good question. And the answer is actually only just one word. The answer is yes. The law is effective. Okay, let me expand to it. I think as law students, you cannot confuse yourself between the expansion and the effectiveness of the wordings of the law to the industry. And you must not forget, while most of us as a I was London external student, UK grad, etc. In England, there is no Contract Act. We study everything based on common law. But in Malaysia, when you practice like me, soon, you'll be one of us very soon. Our Bible or Quran, depending on which religion you're from, is the Contract Act. So the contract is clear, it's very clear. Section 10 of the Contract Act makes it very clear when parties agree, it's agreed. The problem is that it's not the contract law, Nakiran, it is the drafting of the contract, it's the wordings of the contract. When you draft the contract, how do you capture the consensus at the dam of the two parties, the meeting of minds of the two parties? That is a challenge. And that's got nothing to do with the law. That is the industry. And I would not at all, if the government of Malaysia ever asked me, or if, well, now we have a change of government again. So maybe we should refer to the Parliament of Malaysia. If they ever ask me, Richard, do we need to change the laws for contract for esports? The answer is no. It's more than enough. So it's a good question. And the articles that you referred to, thank you for referring to my article. It goes to show people actually read. I'm surprised. Imagine what you're writing in the middle of the night, nothing to do, just sit down, tap, right, and then suddenly 4 years later, someone asking you about the article. So when we append those articles in 2016, you look at the time that we wrote, it was challenging times. Even the American lawyers who were ahead of us, they were still, in Malaysian favorite word, they were just tembak. Half the time I can hear them talking, they just tembak. So you look at them, so they think because, no disrespect anybody who's Caucasian and who's white, they think because they are white men, they are able to tell me, a brown guy, what to do. So I just listen lah. I said, oh, okay, all right, sure, yeah, thanks. Yeah. So then, but I realized that what they don't know what we are doing, and what they say cannot apply to Malaysia. So after a while, I realized I'm on my own. I had to find my own way to advise the client. So again, sorry to go one big round, but to answer the question, the answer is we have good laws, we don't need to amend. And I think the big challenge is that it's not the law, it's how you draft. And that's where experience come in to try and encapsulate every element into the one paragraph. You get it lah. When you come and practice, any areas you do, the first few years you will struggle in your drafting skills. Of course, some people naturally are good drafters. That's good. I'm one of them who's not a good drafter. I've always been a barrister. Since I was young, I was talking. My lecturer always said, you talk too much, Richard. So I'm glad now I'm being paid to talk. Well done to me. I'm so happy. But I've never been a prolific writer. But you take time, and you come and practice writing, learn from the best from your law firm, and you'll get it eventually.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Keep it up. Next question, please.
Okay, so the next question is asked by Amitesh, but he would like me to ask his question on his behalf. So Amitesh's question is, how do esports regulations impact the legality of betting? Given a lot of players currently trade or bet on competitions and events, in addition, how do you deal with match fixing issues and gamers' potential betting on themselves during competitions?
Very good question. Because today's lecture was a summarized version, I think you heard me mention about a loot box at the beginning, and that was it. Issues of gaming match fixing has an element of crime in it. So the answer to you is that the esports regulation at the moment, the impact is minimal because it only impacts on that tournament. So if someone catch Richard Wee to play while playing Dota 2, I'm cheating, or CSGO, I'm cheating, I'll be banned for that tournament. So in this game, for example, I'm called the blue boy, and then the next one I call myself the green boy. The people would know. So that's why I don't think it's effective. But I think the people who should at this moment in Malaysia, because of the lacuna of an effective esports administrator like FIFA, because we don't have that, I think the more appropriate party to enforce this would be the police and the anti-corruption agency. I know it sounds really distant, like wow, police coming in, but that's the truth, because here the two issues that you raised, Amitesh, is a crime. So illegal betting in Malaysia is a crime. I think the only few areas you can bet in Malaysia is Magnum 4D, Sports Toto, Genting Highlands. Those are guys with a proper license. But esports don't have that license, so therefore it's illegal. And when it's illegal, the police steps in. For match fixing, in 1994 and 1995, Malaysia went through an infamous moment where more than 1/3 of our football players were arrested for match fixing. Guess who arrested them? Not FIFA, not AFC, MACC. And of course, that time they were known as ACA, the Anti-Corruption Agency. So there you go. I think if the matter continue to come to the forefront, and I hope it doesn't, then you will soon see the police and MACC stepping in. And I know for a fact the police, well, prior to the MCO, they were keeping a tight view on esports. Okay?
All right, thanks.
Kimberly? Yep. Okay, I heard a guy's voice. Yeah.
Sorry. We have one more question by Ong, and Ong
Sure.
would like to direct that question to you by himself. Ong, you
Okay, where's Ong?
You're
Who's
ready.
Ong?
Hi, sir. I'm here.
Yeah,
Can
hi.
you hear me? All right.
Sure.
First of all, I'm very glad and very happy to see someone who is very good in knowing the games as well as doing very well in terms of law. So you're definitely one of the persons which who I will look up upon to. Yeah.
No, you shouldn't. Because I'm a minimal player. I'm so bad at Dota 2. When I went to play, within 5 seconds, the guy next to me was shouting at me. You know, get out, get out. And I can't repeat some of the words he said to me here. So
Never mind. Never mind. I will still tell my mom that, oh, you say someone's playing games, still doing very good in law. So yeah.
Yeah, you know what's the best thing, Ong? My lawyers, they get excited because we actually get to play esports in office. So we're actually playing game for work. So none of my lawyers are upset when I tell them, okay, guys, esports time. They're, oh, okay, you know, start going in. So it's quite fun in the office. Yeah. Okay, all yours, Ong.
All right. So my question is about the possible restrictions and the scrutiny that is being imposed to these gaming platforms. So one of the examples that I'm taking is from China. As we all know, China is using a central government model whereby there are different policies scrutinizing the game platforms, which recently include age restrictions, health restrictions, and also other verbal restrictions. So the impacts of this, of course, include some which are very beneficial, such as maybe players under the age of maybe 13 or 14 are not being allowed to play some games, or they track some of the players who have been playing for so long time throughout the day, and then they ban them from playing. And also some restrictions, which including the players are not allowed to use vulgarities. Now, some of these are of course beneficial and advantageous, but to some extent there's no line being drawn over here. And although this is not happening in Malaysia yet, but do you see any possibility of any restrictions being imposed to any of our gaming platforms locally? And do you agree with them? And yeah, so these two are the questions that I'm asking.
Very good question, Ong. It looks like you have really thought about this. Well done. Very nice to see young people thinking constructively. Always remember, all of you, you can ask silly questions. It's okay. But it's always better to think first and ask yourself the question first before you ask the question. Because if every time you ask a silly question, after a while, people will think you are silly. You know? So, good question. I can see you thought about it. Now, there are 3 issues here. Number 1, the restriction on the internet itself. So one thing about the biggest weakness in any esports game is the internet. And the internet does not belong to Blizzard and Gang. They don't own it. And internet is, every single country in the world, internet belongs to the government. So even if the internet is run by private companies, like in America, they run it under, I think, Motorola, etc., etc. but in the end, they all is controlled by the government. So in Malaysia, of course, is and Singapore, the other country, if you are infamous, everything belongs to the government. So if there is a dispute or if there is an attempt for restriction, technically the Ministry of Telecommunication can cut off the internet and that's it. So you can play. So if there is a dispute, it may escalate to that level, number one. Number two, the internal restriction, this goes back to what I said earlier on, that why it can be done in China is because the esports federation, the association running it, is very, very effective. They have a strong way of putting into effect the decisions they make. So if, example, contoh lah, they decide to ban a player or they want to restrict vulgarity, they keep on hearing you say in Mandarin some vulgar word and they can pick it up, they block you. And that's it, you can't play. And most of the time, this in China, before a tournament is starting, they would have to sign an agreement with the association. And in the agreement, there is a clause which say that if you or your player is very naughty, I will pull the plug. So that's another restriction. They can stop you, right? And they can even control what you can and cannot do, which is good actually, because you don't want esports to become wild, wild west. And if this industry is going to be a proper industry, it must be properly governed. We cannot have an industry which goes up, and because it's so volatile, people don't want to invest, people don't believe in it, it goes down. So this is the second restriction. The third restriction is actually within the tournament itself. So let's say you and I, Ong, we form a team. We go for Mobile Legends, right? So we call ourselves the Taylor's Tigers, two of us. So we represent Taylor's Tigers, going around Mobile Legends, and we sign up in the tournament. So in the tournament rules in the contract of the tournament, they will say what they cannot do. The marshal can step in, for example, while you're playing, and of course, the tournament organizer themselves, the technical people who are watching behind the scene on the laptop, seeing what you're playing. So these are examples of the kind of restrictions they can put. And the answer is yes, they can do it. And whether it is effective or not, it depends on the strength of the association or the media or the government. And whether it's legal or not, the answer is yes, because if they agree to it, it's legal. And whether it's the way forward, I also think yes, that you should have certain restriction. I wouldn't use the word restriction, I would use the word certain rules and regulation, so that people know where they stand. Can you remember on 2 years ago, the infamous case of AirAsia Sanyan? They played in Indonesia. I cannot remember the name of the opponent. They won and they were supposed to play in the semi-final. So what happened was they won, just to give a simple explanation, they won 7 points and then the other team had 7 points. But in the contract between AirAsia Sanyan and the organizer, it says that if two teams are the same, we look at certain countback, and if you are better than this fella, you win. This is what AirAsia Sanyan's contract say. But for some reason, the tournament organizer had a different contract with this team, which say if there's a draw, then the winner will be calculated a particular way. So AirAsia, looking at the contract, and they were in fact informed by the organizer that they won, announced to the whole world that they won. So wow, people were very happy. And then suddenly the tournament organizer came to them and said, hey boss, I'm sorry, we made a mistake actually. Can we do a one-off match, you and this guy, once and for all, winner takes all? AirAsia disagreed and they walked away. And there was an attempt to restrict AirAsia Sanyan after that. The people wanted to ban AirAsia Sanyan after that. People say cannot because it's not their fault. You see, I'm not sure whether I'm really answering your question, but I'm trying to share with you the ideas of restriction, how it works. That's why I say I think it's a very good question, but I'm trying to figure out where your mind is. Did I address your issues so far?
Yes, definitely more than the issues that.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah. I was a bit worried that you may want something else, but yeah, I understand restrictions to me like that. Thank you for the question. Thank you. Keep it up.
Sir. Thank you.
Study hard. Yeah. Next question.
So we have one final question by Amitesh again.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, two more questions. Firstly, by Amitesh, he asks, what are the potential impacts on taxation laws? And the basis of this question is because a large stream of the majority of gamers' income comes from donations and ad revenue on stream platforms like Twitch and Mixer. Do these platforms bear the burden of keeping record of these financial and reporting them to the relevant governments to ensure tax laws are in compliance, particularly because there are streamers from all around the world on one streaming platform?
Good. Good question. Recently, we were invited to address this issue. So I can share with you a few character of income tax first before we answer this question. Always, the joke has always been there are two things certain in life. Unfortunately, this is a bit morbid. The first thing is, of course, death. That is very certain. The second one is tax. That's very, very certain. All of us sure will get hit by tax, number one. So one thing about the character of tax, it's very national. It is ring-fenced by the country. And of course, every country would like to get tax from the other country. So one of the more infamous tax system in the world is in America. Once you are born an American, if you work in Mongolia, you earn Mongolian money, you still pay US tax. The Malaysian government is trying to do that. If they do that, then all our Malaysians who migrated to Australia may have to pay tax here, you know. But so far it's not been done. So that is the thing about tax. It's very country-based. It is ring-fenced by the boundaries of the nation. So then once you understand that, those two very, very, very basic laws of tax laws, then you will then appreciate that if you have an American streamer using a say a Korean a server and then streaming in Russia, therefore earning money in Russia, then this streamer would have to pay tax in Russia. That's the first, because he's earning money in Russia. Doesn't matter that he or she is in America. That's the first question. But because he's American, he probably has to pay tax again in America. And the Korean server, because they are receiving data and if there's earning money, Korea may impose tax too. So the thing about income tax is the word income is there. For income tax, anytime, anywhere, anybody in the world earn income, that government want a tax because of the boundaries. So for what we are advising a few streamer, some of them are earning more money than a lawyer. So sometimes I don't know why I became a lawyer. I should just do streaming, you know. And then I noticed some of the streamers, I apologize if this statement is sexist. Please don't hurt me, but I'm just observing some of the streamers are permanently not wearing any shirt. So this guy got full tattoo, six-pack, and then the camera is conveniently showing the stomach here, so you can see his six-pack. So I wonder what is he trying to show. But wow, he get all kinds of view from straight men, gay men, hot girls, not so hot girls, all going after him. And let's not talk about ladies on streamers. They are the one who makes the most money, right? So we've been asked to advise these streamers. And long story short is, if you earn money in Malaysia, you've got to pay tax. Then you ask the question whether these platforms have to bear the burden of keeping record. One thing I can tell you about tax, when you're not sure, better to follow. Yeah. I can share with you one case I'm doing now. It's an amazing case. My client is summoned by LHDN. And those who doesn't know, LHDN is a Malay word for our income tax department, for an outstanding tax not paid. You hear this year, not paid in 1998. My client is facing such a case. 1998. I wasn't even a lawyer yet. I was still chambering at the time. I was still trying to figure out what to do in my life in 1998. And here I am, 20 over years later, I have a brief on my table where I have to advise my client what to do in 1998. The accountant for my client who did accountant has passed away. The files have disappeared. They have thrown away the tax. But apparently my client didn't pay the tax. So there you go. We are fighting that case. Still ongoing. Of course, due to privacy and solicitor client privilege, of course, I can share with you in detail. But I can just give you the big framework that is tax laws. So my advice to any of you here who want to do tax laws, when you're not sure, do it. You know, and tax is a lucrative area. There are very, very few lawyers doing tax. But you must be pretty good at arithmetic to do tax. And that's why I couldn't do tax. I'm really bad at mathematics, yeah. So there you go. I hope I answered your question, Amitesh. Okay, next question.
So due to time constraint, this is the final question that we'll be asking during this.
But hang on, I thought we have until 3:30, right?
Oh, we can...
what time until? Hamahinda?
It was supposed to be until 3 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
But it's okay. We can go on for one more question.
Okay.
Richard.
I thought until 3:30, so I was getting ready until 3:30. Yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry. I was meant to be until 3, but we can go on for one more question.
I also conduct talks. You know, I always enjoy Hamahinda going back to UM, my old school ATC. You know, now BAC. It's really enjoyable to go back and try to do my bit for the students, you know, because I want them when they come and become my fellow member of the bar, they don't end up being a dunku, you know. The law school can only do so much. The law lecturer can only do so much. The student must be prepared. And the bar council, we are not a university. We are a statutory body. So, you know, I try to go back to universities like this to make sure all these students here, when they come out, they end up not being a dunku, you know, not dumb, you know, use your brains. And
yeah, but this will be the first of many more sessions to come, Richard. Definitely. Yeah, so we will definitely, I'm sure our students are enjoying themselves engaging with
good. I'm on it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so no worries. One last question, Kimberly, and then we can.
All yours, Kim. All yours, Kim.
So I'm asking this question on behalf of Tiffany, and her question is, given that esports has a global reach and players are often traded to play for different circuits, how would the jurisdiction be decided should a conflict arise? Would the usual conflict of law rules apply, i.e. would it follow the law of the region where the player is playing for, or would it follow the esports law in that home country?
Oh, this is a good question. I've never been asked this kind of question before for esports. Okay, as usual, when you're facing something you have never done before, what do we do as a lawyer? Go back to your basics. Always go back to your basics. So this question is about esports global reach, players often traded for different circuits. So there's a multiple jurisdiction involved. So this is what I'll do. First thing is first, I'll look at the contract between the player and the outgoing club. So the player would have signed some kind of contract with the outgoing club that he or she is attached to. Let's read the contract first. Whether the contract allows this player to be sold that way, whether the contract can be transferred to another club, etc., and whether there is a mechanism, and whether the contract prescribed a way for us to deal with this transfer, number one. Then number two, we look at the law. As usual, when there's conflicts of law, we look at where the contract is signed. So if we have a person from Uruguay signing a contract with a Chinese gentleman, but the tournament is held in Morocco, and the contract is signed in Morocco, so I will be inclined to follow the law of Morocco. But of course, if the contract has a clause to say that, notwithstanding the tripartite nation character of the contract, well, we're going to use Australian law, there you go, we look at Australian law. So to sort out this kind of disputes, if you are a normal sports person, sports dispute will go to sports tribunal, or at the highest court will be the Court of Arbitration for Sports in Switzerland. It's a very nice place. If ever of you have any chance to travel to Switzerland, it's an expensive country, save your money, go there. Go and visit Lucerne. No, Lausanne. Lausanne is the other town. Lausanne is where the headquarters of IOC is, and CAS is there, the Court of Arbitration for Sports. It's a nice bungalow. Yeah, you should go. So that is we will go to the court. But because esports don't have such a court, so I guess I'll see you in Mahkamah Duta. Duta Court. If you're in KL, so if you're in Ipoh, ask you in Ipoh courts. So it'll be a court situation. We don't have an esports tribunal yet in Malaysia. I hope I answered Tiffany's question. Hang on, would the usual conflict of law rules apply? Yes, it will apply.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Richard.
Did I answer you, Tiffany? Where are you?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Concludes the Q&A session. We will begin the closing remarks. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our second dialogues for 2020. On behalf of the law school, I would like to express our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Richard Wee for graciously honoring us today with his presence. Thank you to all of you who are present here today, and we hope that you have a great day ahead of you.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much, Richard, for your time. And as I said, this will be the first of many more sessions to come. Definitely want you to engage with our students and vice versa, our students to engage with you.
Thank you, thank you.
So thank you for your time, and I hope that you have enjoyed our students' company as much as I'm sure our students have enjoyed yours.
Thank you, thank you. Can I just end by saying this, Aminda? Now,
yes, please, yes, please.
Very quick one. I don't worry, this is not one of those long submissions in court. Number one, really thank you to Taylor's. It's amazing. I think unbeknown to many of you, I used to lecture in Taylor's in the year 2003. I was teaching contract law for Australia in your campus in Subang for about a year. I was teaching part-time, and that's because I just opened my own law firm, and a friend of mine who was working in Taylor's invited me to lecture. I was earning extra money, and I enjoyed my time very much. And before that, I was a lecturer in Goons College in 1997. Because, as you know, economy crashed in 97. I knew I could not get any job as a pupil, so I went to lecture and save my money before I went to chamber. Those days, as a chambering student, I only earned 300 ringgit. It wasn't even enough to eat, but what to do, you know? That was back then. So, number one, thank you to Taylor's. You know, you've grown so much. You're now at university, your campus is beautiful. If I was a student, I would love to go back to Taylor's. I was in ATC, and those who know where ATC is, you wouldn't want to go to that campus. But ATC was a really formidable law school at the time, one of the best, and we all were well trained there. So much credit to Dr. Siva and the late Danny Chung Den. Number two, I think esports law is something all of us can explore. I think you all should continue reading up on it. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in this area yet, because you know we're still trying to understand the area, but we're trying very hard to understand. So when you're not sure, go back to basics. Thirdly, just a general message to law students, you know, your lecturers are working very hard to try and get you to pass your exam. And of course, you know, we respect some lecturers can be a little bit odd. We all know that, you know, and some lecturers are like a bit odd, but so are students. Students are also very odd, you know. So all of us carry our own idiosyncrasies from home to go to school. And your lecturers will deal with you on that point. And then you come to work with me in 4 or 5 years' time. I have to deal with your idiosyncrasies. So the thing is that when you come in and be a lawyer, you need to have the character of a lawyer. You have to have the identity of a lawyer. You need to have the integrity of a lawyer. No use being a lawyer if you're a con man. No use being a lawyer if you just want to cheat. And don't come into law if you just want to earn money only. You need to, earning money is important, but that's not the only thing. You need to have the character to do pro bono work, to help people, human rights, legal aid. And I know Taylor's does a lot of legal aid awareness program. Bagus. You must continue doing that. There are millions and millions of Malaysians who are always suffering from the wrath of the law. And we are the only people who stand between them and any incorrect and injustice. So if we don't stand up and defend them, no one else will. You know, more often than not, we are the last bastion of hope for people when law is involved. So, you know, I would encourage law students to embrace the character of a lawyer. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the next Maserati or Audi A5. I'm talking about you being the good person, doing the right thing, you know. Sorry, because I lecture ethics in Bar Council. So I do this all the time to try and...
It's a very good reminder for our students. And I think from time to time, it's very nice for our students to hear it from someone else, because they hear it from us all the time.
And they don't believe you, right?
They don't believe us anymore, so maybe it's time for
Listen,
them to
yeah.
hear it from someone else.
Listen to your lecturer. Okay, thank you, Taylor. Thank you very much. Good luck. Stay safe.
Thank you
Together,
so much.
together we will prevail. We will get over this together.
Yes, surely we'll do it
Yes.
together.
So we need everyone to switch on their cameras so that we can take a online group photograph.
Oh, okay, all right, sure.
Yeah. How are we doing this, Sophia?
Are we doing screenshot?
I'll just wait for Zia, C, Ethan, for
Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
everyone.
So shouldn't we take a screenshot?
Yeah, so I'm taking a screenshot. So I'm just waiting for everyone to turn on their camera.
Oh, one more thing, Hamahina. Can I get a copy of the recording of this?
Yes, of course, definitely. We
Can I
send
get
it to
consent?
you.
I don't mind. Can I get consent from Taylor's to upload on the Richard V. Chambers YouTube page?
Yes, I'll get that for you. No worries at all.
Okay, if you need consent, I'll write in to get permission. If
Yeah.
you cannot, no problem. But if you can, good. I will upload.
No worries.
I will-
I'll speak to you. I'll speak to you later about this.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So I'll take 3 shots, yeah? All right, so 1, 2, 3. And I'll take another one. Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. And 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. All right.
Thank you, Richard.
Who would have thought we take photograph this way?
Thank you, Mr. Richard.
Okay, take care, guys.
Thank you
Study
so
hard.
much, Richard.
Goodbye.
Yes,
All right.
thank
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Good
Take
job.
care. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Take care. Yeah, keep in touch. Thank you. Yeah.